In this WrestleTalk news, Cody Rhodes has really, officially re-signed with WWE for real this time. Promise, no takebacks. My review of SmackDown, Tempest review of Rampage, and more. Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos because Cody Rhodes' WWE return confirmed. For real, probably, maybe.
Support WrestleTalk!
Yes, we've been going back and forth for weeks now about Cody Rhodes' status and whether he has truly left AEW and whether he truly is going back to WWE and what brand he'll be on and what match he'll have at WrestleMania, etc, etc. But now we have actual confirmation he's going back to WWE. Probably. If you're getting bored of the Cody story by now, here's a recap in the form of a rap. Cody and Brandy left AEW, referenced on Raw, not so subtle you, but then this future became unsure. Talks fizzled out, people wanted more. Return to AEW or ROH, now said reports joining Triple H, face Seth Rollins at Mania, and here we are, the reports getting samier and samier and samier. Took that line from Adam's John Cena booking video. But now the reports aren't samier, because according to Mike Johnson of PW Insider, Cody Rhodes has officially re-signed with WWE. The deal was reportedly inked 10 to 14 days ago, and Cody will be making his return at WrestleMania. Early speculation is that he'll be on the Raw brand, which makes sense as that's the brand he's been mentioned on a few times. Another hint towards Cody's imminent WWE return comes from TalkSport's Alex McCarthy reporting in the WrestleTalk magazine, which you can get for just £1 by clicking the link in the description, as sources he's spoken to that are close to Cody said that he's always wanted to succeed in WWE specifically, and that's an itch he just needs to scratch. And according to Sean Ross Sapp, he's spoken to several top WWE stars in the last month, brag, who say that they're very excited about the prospect of Rhodes returning to the company. Perhaps Rhodes returning will be the jolt of energy the current product desperately needs. But from one former EVP of AEW to a current one, as we're talking about Kenny Omega. Omega has been off our screen since Full Gear as he needed all of the surgery and time to heal from all of the injuries. But that hasn't stopped him from carrying out his EVP duties within the company, including his involvement in talent relations and the AEW video game. According to a new report from Fightful, his sources were heaping praise on Omega for his work ethic and commitment to his roles, as he hasn't let his multiple surgeries or injuries stop him from his duties, as he was the one who reportedly informed Brian Cage AEW would be picking up his contract extension option, as well as working heavily on the AEW video game, including working on a story mode. Omega reportedly understands how important the first release is and is determined to make it a success. Now let's talk tickets. AEW's Double or Nothing is coming in May, and it has already been record-breaking for AEW, as it marks their first $1 million gate. Now, the Wrestling Observer newsletter notes that while it hasn't sold out yet, it has sold 12,939 tickets, making a $1.15 million gate, makes it the highest grossing non-WWE North American wrestling show ever. Meanwhile, in WWE over WrestleMania weekend, things aren't looking quite so peachy for the most stupendous etc. show, as there are still more than 20,000 tickets available across both nights, and more of those tickets will definitely be sold, but sellouts seem unlikely at this point, according to the newsletter. However, some positive news for WWE is that NXT Stand and Deliver, which takes place earlier on Saturday, was originally set up for 5,059 fans. However, they reportedly will be easily passing that number, and WWE will be opening more seats, so that's nice. And in more good news for NXT, the USA Network is reportedly said to be happy with their viewership figures, according to Andrew Zarian, so that's also nice. Now it's time for my review of last night's SmackDown, which is less nice. Spoilers. Thank you for being awesome pledge hammers on Patreon, Gavin, Cash Money, Kashiwabara, and the Baker, Adam Cakebread. You can get your own shout out and loads of extra bonus content by visiting us at patreon.com/WrestleTalk. The show began with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns' video from Madison Square Garden, which they just love, followed by a recap of last week with Brock Lesnar chasing a car. Out came Roman Reigns with his long entrance, and the first word spoken on this show, which was Roman Reigns' usual acknowledge me bit, was uttered 7 minutes into the episode. That's like 2/3 of the video you're watching now, and nothing has happened. Paul Heyman revealed to Roman that Brock Lesnar's plane was grounded due to weather difficulties, so he won't be on SmackDown tonight, but swerve, he actually will be because he's on his way now. Roman seemed legitimately upset Brock wouldn't be there on the show because he wanted to beat him up, and then was legitimately upset when Brock was going to be there, which makes total sense. But Reigns and the Usos hurriedly rush off and get into a car to leave the arena, but uh-oh, here's Lesnar with a forklift. Now this is a WrestleMania build. Lesnar charges at their car and smashes the windows with the forks of the forklift. Awesome! And then it immediately cuts to an ad break. And I do mean immediately, like it was fading to black as the forklift hit the car. This company can't do anything right. But don't worry, after the ad break, they do a recap and show you all the things that happened during the ad break. Why not just show that in the actual show? What is wrong with you? Look, this was some goofy fun, and Lesnar having fun and smashing a car with a forklift was hilarious, but the pacing and the lack of understanding of it ruins it. Lesnar chased a car and ripped a door off its hinges. That's awesome. But he did it in an ad break, so we only saw it in a recap. That sucks. Even the good stuff can't be good in WWE. Come on, lads. Lesnar came out to the ring after with the car door, which was great, and then seemingly stumbled on his promo a little bit, saying he was coming for blood before pausing for a while, repeating that he was coming for blood, and then said that Roman had better be prepared. Rick Boogs and Shinsuke Nakamura then had a match against Los Lotharios next, which Boogs won relatively quickly. Commentary were putting over just how much Boogs has aided Nakamura, and he was looking better than ever. Since Boogs has joined Nakamura, he's been injured and lost the IC title. After a recap of last week where Drew McIntyre beat up everyone, which was essentially the entire segment, we had McIntyre and the Viking Raiders versus Corbin, Jinder Mahal, and Shanky. And you might be thinking, where's Madcap Moss? He's busy cutting jokes about Happy Corbin backstage that Corbin didn't like. WWE can't help themselves with tag team dissension. It permeates all stories. Something I don't mention often on these reviews because I only have so much time, but definitely detracts from the product, is the camera work. The opening of this match was a particularly bad stint for me that stuck out, so I counted how many camera cuts there were in the opening sequence of the match, which was Eric punching Shanky, Shanky moving him into the corner, the two brawling out of the corner, and Shanky hitting a clothesline, which lasted 18 seconds. How many camera cuts do you think there were? 14! 14 camera cuts in 18 seconds. That is entirely disorientating. This is through the whole show as well. It's awful. So just know that in every review, that's an unspoken negative through the whole show. McIntyre won, of course, in a nothing match. After a recap of Sami Zayn and Ricochet from last week, Sami Zayn challenged Johnny Knoxville to an Anything Goes match at WrestleMania, which I assume is somehow different to an Extreme Rules match, or a No Holds Barred match, or a street fight, or a no DQ match. We then had Sasha Banks and Naomi versus Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, which makes sense as they're both in the women's tag title match at WrestleMania, and neither of them are the champions. On board with this, and it was a great match. They got given some time, some great near falls towards the end, and a huge Tower of Doom spot as well. Very, very good. Natalya and Shayna Baszler caused the DQ. As I said before, even the good stuff can't be good in WWE. They were then added into the WrestleMania Women's Tag Title match because, yeah, I guess. Pat McAfee was mysteriously summoned to Mr. McMahon's office before an ad break, and afterwards he was walking backstage, and then he came out to the ring after a long pause with Michael Cole talking. You're not gonna show him meeting Vince? Okay. Pat then cut a babyface promo about wrestling at WrestleMania being his dream before he was interrupted by Austin Theory and said that Mr. McMahon told him he had to apologize to him, something that was set up and mentioned at the start of the show, something we already knew. Pat apologizes to Theory, sort of, and Theory shoves him and walk off. Great stuff, guys. Super invested in this match. After a full recap of the forklift from earlier, we then got Kofi Kingston versus Rich Holland, where Sheamus and Butch, who I legitimately forgot was part of their little faction, were ejected from ringside, but then ran back down and distracted Kingston anyway, so Holland won. And then finally, after a recap of Charlotte and Rousey from last week, Charlotte cut a promo calling Rousey a one-trick pony once again, which doesn't make sense because she's been talking about how she's been learning new skills, and then Ronda comes out, they brawl, and Charlotte stood tall, putting Rousey through the commentary table. That was the show. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Vote on the poll on the community tab, where 64% of you voted for the most lackluster two-night WrestleMania build in history. This show was not very good. Even the good stuff had giant question marks next to it, with Brock's forklift shenanigans being cut off by an ad break, the one good match having a DQ finish. This is WrestleMania season, and it really, really doesn't feel like it. This is a 1 out of 5 show. This was real bad. Not good. At all. Now here's Tempest's review of Rampage. I'm gonna go lie down. Hate the show.
Yeah, start this show at 11:30 p.m. again. I'll show you some March Madness. What's going on, WrestleTalk friends and fans? Tempest is back with another review of AEW Rampage in about 3 minutes. So this show kicked off with the match already in the ring as Darby Allin took on the Butcher. I gotta say, since coming back from his injury, the Butcher looks like he's in the best shape of his life. He was awesome in this match, and Darby Allin took him out with a wicked tope suicida. This was a fun opening match, and it had a really interesting finish as Darby Allin hit a huge coffin drop off the top rope to the floor, winning the match by countout. You don't often see matches won by countout in AEW, but in this case I like it, as it seems like more of a strategical decision on the part of Darby Allin to win the match by countout rather than try and roll him back in the win and continue on. After the match, the Andrade family office attacked Darby Allin and Sting, and they were saved by the Hardy Boys, setting up a huge tornado 8-man tag on Dynamite next week. This was a particularly fun opening match, and I'm interested to see if Andrade is now going to get the big push now that Jeff Hardy has arrived and pulled Matt Hardy away from the AHFO. This was a very fun opening match. This gets a 4 out of 5. We then had the grudge match between Red Velvet and Layla Hirsch. There was a real intensity to this match. Layla Hirsch's offense comes across very believable, and that's very important for someone of her stature. If you're going to be a successful small competitor, you need believable offense, and Layla Hirsch pulls that off very well. What had me shocked, however, was the finish of this match as Chris Statler came down and stopped Layla Hirsch from using the turnbuckle, and Red Velvet was able to get the win. Chris Statlander appears to be using a more serious character going forward, which I'm looking forward to, as I see her as a potential candidate to beat Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship. This was a pretty solid match. I would have liked to have seen Layla Hirsch pick up a few more wins, but it seems like her rivalry with Chris Statlander is not close to being over, and I enjoyed their match at Revolution. I would look forward to seeing it again. So this match will get a 3 out of 5, and we will move right on to the big 6-man tag as the House of Black took on Bear Country and Fuego del Sol. The House of Black are really fun. They kind of remind me of the Shield in the way that their offense just flows perfectly together. The finishing sequence in particular was spectacular as Buddy Matthews caught Fuego del Sol with a huge knee as Malachi Black and Brody King hit stereo dives, and Buddy Matthews hit the, I don't know if it's called the Murphy's Law anymore, probably not, but he hit Murphy's Law on Fuego del Sol for the win. This was a match that didn't need to go too long, and it perfectly showcased the House of Black and how they are a very formidable trio. Trios titles win. This match gets a 4 out of 5. And then we got the main event as Keith Lee took on Max Caster. It's pretty cool that these Rampage cards keep getting loaded up with pretty top talent, with the arrivals of Keith Lee, Swerve, the House of Black, and the Hardys. There's just a lot of talent on this show. You're obviously going to get a very different main event match from Keith Lee than you would from someone like Adam Cole, just because the styles are so much different, but Keith Lee and Max Caster still had a very fun match. Keith Lee hit a huge Big Bang Catastrophe to get the win over Max Caster, and then he was then jumped by Team Taz, only to then be saved by Swerve. I don't know if it's going to be a permanent thing, but I like the partnership of Swerve and Keith Lee. They have a very fun energy about them. Any one of the men in this feud could make a good next TNT champion, and at this point, it's really Tony Khan's picking who he wants to put the title on next. This main event gets a 4 out of 5, capping off a 4 out of 5 episode of Rampage. And that just about wraps it up for me. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this week's show and last night's SmackDown, make sure you go over to WrestleTalk podcast later on today, where myself and Chopper Pete will be breaking down both shows in complete detail. And until then, remember, stay beautiful, and LIW's fine. We've got all the gold! Not only was the promotion a breath of fresh air compared to the corporate sheen of WWE, but the different styles on display gave hardcore fans a promotion that they could latch onto, with matches that were more like what they were looking to get out of their wrestling, with promotions like ECW now out of business. You had rivalries like CM Punk versus Raven, which was very different from anything WWE was putting on television at the time.